it was a very interesting meeting. Commodity traders, mostly bonds, currencies, and not a lot of other things. S&P futures, stock futures, but not cotton, not copper contracts. No, there was, oh gosh, what is it? The euro dollar contracts. We had lunch and I learned a bunch of different things. Runner. I want Swift to become the runner, and the runner for managing the Ripple XRP transfers. Okay, we're ready. We're ready, Ripple. We're ready. We got A and B all set here. No nostro vostro. I did my job with the memo because that's all I do now at Swift. Oh my gosh, Swift! If they're not careful, if they pick the wrong fights, they're going to be shown the door.
I think it's already happening little by little, but a few things to tackle on what you said over there, and going back to gold too, because one thing we can look at, there are so many moving pieces to all of this, but one thing we can certainly look at is the U.S. debt. They say it's 37 trillion. I put a tweet out today. I don't agree it is 37. In fact, I think it's way over 150 trillion because you have to factor in 100. At 100. Yeah, maybe even 2, right? But you have to factor in Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, government expenses, the black budget, and that is something bigger. And I think over time, when with all this other frameworks being put in motion from the central banks and so forth, and all the gold buying, there's certainly another quiet story happening behind the scenes. And my point, though, is that it's going to get to a point where eventually blockchain, when we're talking about Ripple Net, it's going to expose and provide that transparency that's going to show the full picture. And I think that's a kind of moment where you could start to see gold really be at these very high valuations, like being reset, revalued, if you will, like $10,000, $20,000 an ounce. It's not fantasy. It's just math. We've spoken to people in the past who have been in the financial sector, in the gold space, specifically in Switzerland. They came up with the numbers in 2022 that gold should have been 87,000 an ounce when you factor in everything. And factor where am I bringing
the money supply? Factor in the money supply.
That's one piece of it. Certainly, I agree with you. But in essence, what I think is playing out is that gold, again, being integrated back into the system. For those, listen, the analysis is not theoretical of some of the things we've talked about here. And you and I talked about this before, maybe 2 years ago. But the mechanisms are clearly being laid out through institutional adoption, institutional behavior, central bank positions, liquidity being focused around regulatory frameworks. What regulatory frameworks? We're talking about the IMF, the BIS. Now, my point, though, is that gold is going to provide stability and intrinsic value for where this is all going. And I think XRP is going to be that layer, enable settlement, transfer that can move value like gold across markets, creating a bridge for traditional and digital finance. But the trend is clear, in my opinion. I think gold is going to anchor value, and I think XRP will move it efficiently. I mean, this is what the infrastructure is telling me years before it may happen.
I think we're going to see a reval, Bursan. We're going to see a reval. It's not going to be just one item. It's not going to be just one asset. How would it be if you distract from the XRP reset reval? If you have a $20,000 gold reval, you have a $150 silver reval, or $200 reval for silver, and at the same time you reval your XRP to be 1,000 or 2,000. Now that's a big jump for XRP. That'd be like 1,000 would be 400 from what it is now.
You're basically saying, to complement it, basically if gold's price is quietly being revalued at some point to support this new system, basically to backstop the tokenized reserves and these debt instruments, it's very possible we're going to watch the early stages, but eventually get to a place where global repricing takes place. And that will actually require XRP to match that value that's flowing across.
And the gold reval and silver reval will be a distraction. People won't focus entirely on the fact that they just jumped XRP more than 100-fold. And that will be to enable its proper designed function. Yes. We cannot have a global adoption of XRP with a $50 price. It will not work. So what we might get is a segmentation coming, where there'll be some BRICS nations, there'll be Japan, Korea. I think the United States is going to be a laggard. We're going to be a laggard. We're not leading. We're not leading jack shit. We're leading in congressional disunity. We're leading in civil war. We're leading in election fraud. We're leading in border disputes where we can't even control our own borders. We're leading in cartel warfare. We're leading in bickering, partisan bickering that shuts down a stupid shit government. We're not leading in jack shit. That's why I think we're going to be following the rest of the world. And I just read an article today. It said Japan is now considering that they should follow the BRICS movements and initiatives rather than the Western, because the Westerns are so bent on war and bickering.
Well, I think they're fighting for survival, and they're just disguising it as national security. And here's another thing to your point. I actually tweeted this like a year ago, that it's, if you look very closely at some of the things we talked about, Jim, it would seem that something is being built called ARC, where basically America, Russia, and China are going to have a coalition against the European countries. And where I'm going with this is interesting. I'm going to ask you about it, and I want your honest, unfiltered take without getting me kicked off YouTube, if that's possible. But it's very possible that if you look closely at everything, it seems that we're moving in the trajectory of the BRICS nations, but we're not calling it that. And we just keep showing American strength when really, I mean, example, 16 states in the US are now putting laws in place to make gold and silver legal tender. We are looking at silver, and we talked about this last time, where it might even become a strategic asset for our government. So if you look closely, right, yeah, that was very interesting. Exactly, right? So when you start to think about these things, and this is where I want to get your thoughts on, because this really ties this conversation together at a much deeper level. For many years, we've talked about this, but we're now talking about the restructuring of global finance. We're talking about gold reemerging as collateral. We're talking about XRP forming that digital settlement layer. But behind all of this, and this is where the other discussion comes in, there's that old story of the old guard, the entrenched financial power structures, the deep state, the banking cabal, whatever you want to call them, this architecture. These are the same entities that controlled the legacy systems, intelligence, defense, big finance. Do you think that they're going down, or are they fighting right now? And, what are your true thoughts about this ongoing battle? Because I think while we're witnessing some form of decentralization expand, we're seeing also the opposite take place, the rollout of digital IDs, the tokenization of everything, own nothing and be happy, the increasing control mechanisms that are wrapped in language and innovation. You know what I mean? So it's something I worry about quite often, and I've made it very clear I will not participate in the system if they try to force some chip into my skin or something along those lines.
I call it the banker cartel.
Sure.
And they've got a cartel business model, and it's loaded with profit, and it enables fraud. It permits fraud with impunity, insider trading. JP Morgan, duplicate serial numbers for treasuries, a certain building in South Manhattan that went down. Yeah, loaded with that kind of data. I believe 9/11, I'm sorry, that infamous day in September, 24 years ago.
Thank you.
That was a bank event. That was a banker event. I believe the banking cartel is now on notice. You adapt to the digital framework, or you're obsolete and you will not be able to compete. You will not be able even to be included and integrated. I gave an example to a client during a consult call. Imagine there are four big banks maybe think of 4 Wall Street banks. And one of them says, we don't want to join the digital transformation. We don't want that architecture. We don't want that. We're going to stick with what we have. We're comfortable. We're comfortable. We know what we have. We're comfortable. And we got a nice business profit model. We're comfortable. 6 months later, they're out of business. Okay, so adapt, get integrated, or become obsolete. You're not going to be shown the door. You're going to be outside looking in. All right, so now the whole battle changes form. Verson, this is really delicate stuff.
Oh, I know.
And here's how I put it in real terms now. BlackRock and JP Morgan said, we want to be involved in the control of this. Ripple, how do we do it? Work with us. Mm-hmm. We're not going to hand you the keys of the kingdom and have Ripple with a bank license, and we all work with you. And before you know it, Stellar has a bank. Before you know it, Hedera has a bank. Before you know it, other, Cardano has a bank. And then all of Wall Street's working for you guys. It's not going to work that way. So BlackRock and JP Morgan asked Ripple, how do we get there? Can we become partners without killing each other, without crushing each other in competition? And that's why I think they're holding it down under 250 with XRP. And that's why I think BlackRock is looking for 3 to 5 billion coins. JP Morgan is looking for 3 to 5 billion coins. And a couple of other Wall Street banks are looking for the same, so that they can earn $100 billion and be major players for the next chapter.
Yeah, that's a very interesting take, and I do appreciate it, because I've thought something very similar too. My brother and I have had this concern. We feel like we're witnessing this very strange convergence. You have decentralization on one hand, and you have centralization happening simultaneously. Because blockchain was really built to empower sovereign individuality, transparency, et cetera, et cetera. But on the other hand, we do see giants like BlackRock, Vanguard, JP Morgan tokenizing assets and inserting themselves as gatekeepers of this new digital economy. And that's almost, in my eyes,
they can't execute the trade. They can't execute the transfer
without XRP.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
That's the partnership.
But this is where it gets weird, though. It's almost like the deep state. Two things to this. Okay, deep state realized, you know what, we can't stop this technology, so they decided to co-opt it to a degree. We can argue on that.
They're trying.
But then there's the other side. This is where stablecoins come in, because stablecoins change the dynamic of the conversation entirely, because they're being used now to provide a new source of liquidity that can extend these kick the can down the road cycles even further. That means institutions can manage systemic risk and maintain broader market stability, sure. But when you look at, for instance, stable coins overall, and yeah, sure, Tether, we can definitely tie this to Tether, but the proposed digital dollar, it gives the perfect example of what we're talking about here, because it allows the US Treasury and the Federal Reserve to expand the reach of the US dollar in a digital format. And this is essentially basically the deep state getting its hands into the pie. And I said this word for word long before David Sachs stood right by Donald Trump and discussed this live. It gave me goosebumps. So I think that's their mechanism to get their hands into this ecosystem. But they still need XRP.
I think the stable coin is the bridge. The key word is bridge. BlackRock and JP Morgan. Those two, if you can solve it for them, you can solve it for the rest of Wall Street. You can solve it for the big regionals.
I'm going to show you something.
BlackRock and JP Morgan need a bridge to the digital world. Go ahead.
This is it. I did a whole report on this in detail. This is one of the bridges they're using with the whole stable coins. Stronghold. This is what they're using to get a lot of the value on chain. And like you said last time, so what if they use Bitcoin? So what if they use Ethereum? Let them bring it on board. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're using this technology to do it. It's one of them. Anyways, I've researched this thoroughly and I've shared it with the audience before. And by the way, anyone investing in crypto, this is certainly a massive opportunity.
Oh, I think that's easily 100x coming.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I heard about Stronghold 2 years ago, and I've got
hopefully for me. No.
I have a client in Texas who's loaded up with Stronghold. Okay, the key is bridge from one world to the other, and Cardano's. Oh gosh, I can't think of his name. The Cardano's president.
Charles Hoskinson, if I'm not mistaken.
Hoskinson, something like that. Anyway, yeah. He basically raised a white flag. What he said was that, reading between the lines, the interpretation of what he said was that Ripple has won. Ripple's strategy has been successful. Ripple and XRP are bridging the old traditional banking world with the new digital world. And Cardano's mistake was to be too pure, was to be too exclusive with digital and no relationships to tarnish and dirty their hands. Cardano did not want to talk to Wall Street and BlackRock.
Yeah.
Ripple did, to make them partners. Ripple is going to be the bridge asset to link the giant financial firms and financial markets. And not just that, but the big financial departments for the giant corporations. Like, Apple's financial department, IBM's financial department, Apple's financial department, Amazon's financial department. They're huge.
Well, yeah, XRP is becoming a global reserve asset then. We can say this. There's no argument over it anymore. It's
we're hearing the word treasury reserve. Treasury. XRP
I think in the early stages, absolutely. But later on down the road, no doubt, the XRP by intrinsic design is supposed to absorb value and consolidate value. That's how it becomes. Everybody holding an XRP token essentially is holding a stake in a system that is gradually consolidating everything around it.
In a protocol. Now, how long will it be before Google announces this? I'm just fast forward 18 months ahead.
Yeah,
okay?
Trend forecasting, yes.
Google announces and Amazon announces that they've got a $20 billion profit from their XRP held in their treasury.
Yeah. Yeah, things just really start to get out of control.
And the Amazon stock and the Google stock goes up tenfold.
Okay. And this is basically the real play, how XRP could be used as leverage later on down the road. Another discussion for another time.
And other, Silicon Valley firms, they know about the development with XRP better than most of your average Joes running around in St. Louis, Detroit, Denver, and Atlanta, and Miami. Okay, I focus on bridge. Okay, Unix was interoperable across computer architectures. XRP is interoperable across different financial systems.
Yes.
Structures and their own protocols and their own, what's the right word? Their own standards. Okay, when I was at Digital, we had huge arguments over whether you could use and how long will it take to take a bunch of software, a whole library of software for IBM and make it usable in digital. Unix solved that. XRP is going to solve the same thing. Interoperable.
Right. Yeah. And that's why it's so important to recognize that, it's a complementary ecosystem to a degree, but there are assets that are going to form some sort of natural hierarchy of finance. You will have like a kind of a central bank. I think Ripple is on its way to becoming that. A bank, basically a trusted custodian. Yes. And an alternative to central banking. You have retail markets, which are very important. Of course, I think XLM is fulfilling that role to a degree, and that's debatable as well. And then you have the payment rails. So each of them is interoperable. They're all built to flow and bridge to each other, and they're all compliant with the regulatory framework. So this is kind of what you're referring to, a new messaging standard that's being adopted globally by banks and central banks and individuals alike and small businesses and so forth.
Let me introduce yet another important point from my notes. It's hydraulics. You've got 100, 200, 500 major corporations in the United States, Canada, Western Europe. They all have to play ball, collaborate, and become partners with the bridge asset for doing their transfers. How many are there? XRP, XLM, Cardano, HBAR.
Strategic assets.
How many different strategic corporations are there that have the coins, the altcoins that work? Cardano. There was one more that I missed. I can't think of what it. No, I said okay, HBAR. But
you can count them in. I know they're in there for a fact.
XDC.
XDC.
I thought XDC was going to be a major player for stock market transactions until NASDAQ got introduced to XRP. Everywhere XRP competes, they seem to win. Okay, this is very exciting. Okay, the hydraulics. Here's the point. You got 1,000 different companies, and they're all funneling into 7.
Yeah.
There aren't 700 majors in the crypto digital world building out the infrastructure.
Yeah, it's consolidating all value. Mm-hmm.
It's consolidating value, but there are only a few of them.
Right.
Therefore, they're all very likely to go up 1,000-fold.
I agree entirely. Jim, I mean, listen, fantastic discussion. I did tell you I do have another call approaching here shortly. However, there is something. If you're comfortable talking about this, I know you are. But before we wrap up, I do want to bring this topic up, and I'm going to start talking about this little by little because I think it's important. So what I want to get your take on, and I think it is even connected to some of the other things we talked here today about global coordination, control, and even potential psychological operations. It gets a little weird here, but if you see a lot of the narratives being said about major disclosures coming in 2026, now this is around the UAPs. Are you familiar with the UAPs, or what most people call the UFO thing? I mean, the mainstream coverage around this has grown exponentially. I don't think that's an accident with the direction everything is going, whether it be political or financial, because it's really the financial system that underpins society and our behavior behind it. So the speculation now is not everything that we've been told. I don't think it's organic. I think it's mostly BS, what's coming out as far as how the narrative is being set. Now, I do remember, and I have listened to people in the past, where the founders of NASA in the early days, and we can all translate NASA and see what that means. I don't want to say it here. But one of the close colleagues was warned that eventually there would be an engineered false flag event, which would be a stage scenario involving an extraterrestrial threat used as a final underlying force, you could say, to bring all nations under a one world government. And now I'm not saying that's guaranteed that it could happen, but I think given the circumstances and how the narrative is being set and what we've seen with the global coordination during the pandemic, other crises, how do you think this narrative could be used to consolidate power? I'm just curious what you think about all of this.
Okay, this is a good opportunity for me to share a philosophical strategy that I've had with my newsletter for 22 years now. It's 21 and a half years. If they talk about it and it gets out there in the discussion, it ain't going to happen.
Interesting.
Okay, now let me give you some exact examples, precise examples. It was somewhere around early 2023, and we heard that there might be a nuclear detonation in Poland, and they might blame it on the Russians. False flag. And I said, therefore, it won't happen. Then we heard that there might be a Marburg pandemic explosion. Marburg, which is a combination of smallpox and Ebola, laboratory produced. It might happen in the United States. And I just started monitoring, and after a few months, I've heard it about 20 times. Therefore, it's not going to happen. put it out there 20 times. It's not going to happen.
Why are they doing it?
They're doing it so that it won't happen.
I mean, it's possible they're doing it to keep us distracted from XRP too.
I think the white hats have a supercomputer simulation at work, and they realize the same thing I do. If you talk about it 20 times, it will not happen. So let's get the Marburg out there 20 times. Let's get the alien invasion out there 20 times. Maybe they'll do the attack and they'll do it on the sun, but they'll do it at night.
I totally understand where you're coming from. Okay. No, I get it, Jim. But I one thing I know for certain is that the tech that you see and hear a lot about is real. When I was an undergraduate, I was at Rice University and I was studying nanotechnology. And one thing I took a very close interest in was quantum trapping, anti-gravitational force fields, and how essentially you can indeed extract energy from the vacuum of space-time. And that's essentially the empty space between us. It starts to get really weird.
It's over my head.
Yeah. So, like, obviously the tech exists. So where did that come from?
The tech is there.
Is it something else? I mean,
I think the alien colonies are deep in the ocean. I've seen many videos regarding the U.S. Air Force tracking, and then all of a sudden, hey, they just went into the Pacific, 220 miles east of Los Angeles. We can't track them. And the Tic Tacs, the Tic Tacs they talk about, the little items they call them a Tic Tac. It's just a nickname, but it's a monitor, and it moves tremendously fast. Okay, I have one instance that's close to home, and I don't want to mention locations and I don't want to mention names, but I was told a story where a friend of mine actually saw an event, and what he does is he likes to look east for the sunrise, and he has a home on a hill, and he looks over the valley here, and it's a 30 to 40 mile valley. And he saw a purple dot far in the distance over the mountains on the other end of the horizon. And Verson, he counted 6 seconds that it went overhead to the other horizon.
Yeah.
30 to 40 miles in 6 seconds.
Yeah, it's very fast.
Now, okay, this brings about some easy napkin math. 6 seconds is 1/600th of an hour. So you multiply 30 or 40 miles by 600, and you get 18 to 24,000 miles an hour. That purple dot moved. And my question to him was, what was its altitude? I mean, I don't say, whoa, that's really cool. I come out with questions. I asked, did it make any noise? He said, no, silent. How high was it? He said, it was up there. I couldn't see any details on its structure. It was probably 10,000 feet. I said, then it had to be really big. If you saw a dot, that had to be like maybe 100 meters big in diameter. He said, very possibly. 20,000 miles an hour. Okay. We're not alone. I was in X-Files. I love that stuff. I had a crush on Gillian Anderson. I thought she was just gorgeous. Anyway, we're not alone. They're hiding in the ocean.
Underground.
And they're hiding underground, and they're hiding in full view among us.
Interesting.
With disguises or adaptations. I don't want to get into all that.
Yeah,
but
no, neither do I. I just wanted to.
Your question was on the event to bring about a global power shift. I think it's more likely to happen over a failed foundation to the global financial system. I think it's also more likely to happen regarding a geological, geophysical event like, what's the word? Magnetic pole shift. That's already a concern I put in the October report, the mid-Atlantic current disruption, and that's where warm water and cold water circulate along the Atlantic and go all the way below the equator, and salinity is involved for density of the water. The denser water moves more slowly. The pure water that's not so much salinity, it doesn't move as fast. That whole current is slowing down, and it's really alarmed a lot of scientific people, scientific research types in the U.S. military, and that's one reason they're focusing on Greenland. That's just one of several reasons. So,
what are they terraforming? Changing the ionosphere, changing the temperature of the planet.
I don't think it's aliens. I don't think it's alien technology that's affecting the planet Earth. I think it's the human influence. It's pollution. It's garbage. It's not carbon dioxide. How stupid is that?
That is
stupid. And they're calling nitrogen and carbon dioxide pollutants, taking over farms. Okay, these are essentials for life, and that's why they're attacking them. They're essentials for life.
Oh wow! Okay.
When you see these scientific, what do you call it, science fiction movies like Blade Runner 2050. Oh, I've never seen a tree. That must be really beautiful. Okay, that's the fear. We're going to lose our trees. We're going to lose because of the carbon dioxide that's being attacked by these assholes like Bill Gates. I've got a joke, and it's not intended to be a joke. How many times do we have to execute Bill Gates? How many times?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's been 3 already. We're up to number 4. We're coming up to it.
Supposedly. So,
yeah.
All right. So, okay. This was terrific. Thank you for answering that.
I think it's the financial failure. That's the event.
I appreciate that. Okay. I can see that. Certainly there's a reason to it. So I guess then the real question for the audience, it's not whether we're being visited, but whether the idea of being visited becomes really the final pretext to fully integrate us into a digital order, possibly. I'm not going to throw it out there either way. It's very clear. And from my insiders and friends I've spoken to, that 2026, you're going to see a lot of information come out. So, both in terms of what's been disclosed, what's going to be disclosed, and what's eventually going to be deployed. Jim, as always,
Can I close with a brief comment on silver?
Please. My apologies. I should ask.
The word is unobtainium. The shortages are dire. They're drastic. They're severe. And we have already begun. The United States and Trump has already declared silver and a couple of other metals as a strategic national security asset. Mexico is doing the same. They're doing it in a lot different manner. Russia is not, I don't think they're sharing silver for export. I think China has already locked down. Okay, so we got 4 major nations. Mexico is a major nation. They've got close to half the silver production on the planet. Mexico is a silver mine with a bunch of land on top. Okay, that's Mexico. Okay, national security metal competition is coming for silver, and that'll take it to 200 or 300, 400.
I can easily see that. I forgot to mention this, and I should have asked about it, because when I get a lot of this in the comments. Gold and silver are my 2 top buys. I've been buying platinum recently, but silver definitely complements gold. It has a monetary instrument and intrinsic value. Yes, we're going to see some squeezes. Paper market is coming to an end little by little, and blockchain will solidify that as well. But yeah, next time we'll talk about silver a little more deeper. And if anyone's looking to learn a little bit more information on silver, you can certainly follow Jim and even my dear friend Andy Scheckman. I know you and Jim, you and Andy spoke a while back.
Yeah, we know each other.
Yeah. Well, sure. Listen, it's been
Andy's a great guy. Andy is a brilliant guy. I learned from him.
I love Andy. Yeah, he's a good friend.
Let me just say about gold and silver, don't be alarmed at the consolidation here. It got ahead. It went parabolic and went above its trend line. It has to calm down. It'll meet up with the moving averages and move upward again very soon. Don't know
Well,
how long.
they are. I mean, see, these conversations can go on forever, hours.
Yeah.
They are re-leveraging as well. So that's another side to it. So many interconnected reasons. But to your point, I certainly see that. But yeah, we'll have to.
Golden-jackass.com.
Okay.
Support my work. I'm telling you, I'm too vocal. I'm too outspoken. I'm about the only guy who ever talks about money laundering as a financial channel for, like the NASDAQ stocks or for the Swiss banks. Golden-jackass.com. Help me out.